What is going on? Welcome back to Financial Journey. So today I want to talk to you about Lucid. I want to go over some expectations for this upcoming week, go over some of the data points and everything else you need to know. But first, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So starting off this upcoming week, the beginning part, you do have a couple of Fed speakers. So it's going to be that alongside just the basic technicals. So even though Lucid has gone down a little bit over this last 5 days, to be exact, it looks like it's down about 10.59%. Despite that, though, the technicals are still somewhat optimistic. So I'm going to talk about all of that in a second, but it's going to be the tail part of the week. That's going to be the big thing people need to pay attention to. So starting off on Thursday, you have GDP, and that is followed by PCE on Friday. Both of those data points instantly are going to be correlated with rate cuts. Not necessarily the first meeting in September. So September the 18th, there is still that 94% likelihood of a 25 basis point cut, but rather that data will affect the following meeting on November the 7th. So it is fair to assume no matter what happens from now until basically probably a month prior to September, there's going to be this rate cut. But right now, what is up for debate is a second back-to-back cut because of initial jobless claims coming out last week. That did knock it down from around 65 to 57.5% of a following, like I said, 25 basis point cut. So data points coming out this week is definitely going to cause a lot of volatility because it will kind of match whether there's going to be a second rate cut. And that's been one of the biggest driving factors for a lot of growth stocks, such as Lucid, this greater part of this last 2 weeks. So all in all, anticipate a lot of volatility. So in this video, I'm going to be giving you the bull as well as a bear case, dependent on that data, again, Thursday and Friday. Starting off with Lucid, though, you do have pretty much starting off on Monday, these questions. Even though it's not really a catalyst, you can't really buy Lucid based off of that, it is very important. So as you can kind of see, so starting on July 22nd at 2:30, Pacific, this is when they're going to be opening this up. In my opinion, and kind of based on the last several quarters, even though it has a set time right here, it's always kind of messed up. It always gives me a glitch every time I try and open it. It's always the following day. So even though it says the 22nd, kind of take that with a grain of salt. But nonetheless, the questions that are posed on day one are typically the ones that are asked. So this is why you're going to see myself really hound as far as I'm putting forth good questions. So that definitely will be something to kind of take note for this week. For specific Lucid events, they did add quite a few to their website, so that's kind of later weeks though. For this week, it is still at the Legacy West studio. The only thing is it doesn't actually show for upcoming events, but Lucid did tweet this, a couple of things in fact. So a lot of the prototypes are at the Newark studio. It doesn't give an actual definitive date based on that. And then right here, it looks like through July 29th, at the Oak Brook, there's going to be the Sapphire. So both of those aren't necessarily on the website itself, but still, I think just showcasing Lucid's technology is absolutely key. So there isn't really anything crazy planned unless there's some randomness that comes out that maybe Lucid does another interview or whatever else. But nonetheless, I think Lucid has really had and laid the foundation for a very optimistic Q2 earnings. So kind of just stay tuned for that. But when it comes to the data points for this week, if negative, you're going to see shorts double down. So on Friday, shorts did break their trend because over this last several trading days, they have been returning. So it went from around 29% short interest to a low of 27.38. But Friday, they, again, like I said, they broke their kind of trend and increased 1.74 million shares. 27.67% of the free float is being shorted, works out to be 245.07 million shares overall being shorted. That works out to be a grand total of $868 million worth. So very high stuff. And in fact, if you kind of think of it, comparing it to other EVs, there's more dollar value shorting Lucid than some companies, even their market cap, which is kind of crazy. But cost of bar average is 21.18. So needless to say, anticipate shorts to be very active near the tail end of the week, dependent on the data. But if everything goes according to plan, you could see them kind of resume this downtrend and hopefully get to the, I'd say, like low 20s leading into their earnings. Maybe that's a little bit too optimistic, but we'll just have to wait and see. For this upcoming week though, giving you a quick overview of what is going to come from options. So starting off by looking at the open interest, with Lucid closing at $3.50. For those of you that do know options, clearly I can't speak right now, but when a stock does close at the strike price or above, then it is considered in the money. So with it closing exactly on this strike, that does mean the 11,000 in open interest at the 350 strike price is going to be exercised. Same with the 8,000 at that $3 strike price. So nonetheless, you're going to see market makers come Monday buying roughly around 2 million shares. So you'll probably see a nice little bump up in the stock price, or possibly kind of breaking it up through the pre-market dependent on the volume. But nonetheless, market makers are going to cover roughly around 2 million shares. So this is the importance of options. If you guys haven't learned it already, I say this almost like every second video, highly recommend you guys learning it because it can be very, very profitable and very beneficial dependent on your sentiment and whatever else. For this upcoming week though, you do see, based on at least the call options that were purchased on Friday, more of a consensus for it to be above 450. So a very nice recovery. And like I said at the very beginning, even though Lucid's kind of pulled back a lot, the technicals are still somewhat optimistic. So quickly popping over to IBKR. So the Elliott Wave technicals does have a pivot point of $2.99. So as I've brought up in the past, that is a very key point for Lucid, and that in fact is that 50-day moving average. So Lucid and 50-day moving average usually haven't really jived, and when Lucid has been above that 50-day moving average, usually results in like a 30 to 40% run up, and lo and behold, that's basically what did happen with Lucid. But keep in mind that is a strong pivot point going into the next several trading days. So for as long as Lucid is above that, then the technicals are still somewhat optimistic, still pointing for it to kind of hit between that $4.60 and $5 range. No recent analyst ratings as of late. I believe there was one actually 8 days ago. So $2.90 price target, Citi. So most likely come their upcoming earnings slated, I believe it is for the 5th, you will see a lot of analyst ratings as a byproduct of that. But until recently, not really much to talk on for that. So again, in sum, the technicals are still looking fairly optimistic. In the short term though, looking at some of the strong support and resistance points, with it right now at $3.50, it is right below this S1. So currently trading between this S2 and this S1. So 344 is a strong support that you'll want to watch for. We do know it did bounce off of that on Friday, so we at least know that's a strong support level. On the flip side, 352 and then 365 are resistance / targets for Lucid to get above. So kind of just take note of some of the key levels right here. Like I said, especially the beginning part is going to be largely linked to the technicals, and then Thursday, Friday is going to be kind of a Russian roulette for the most part. It's going to be all over the place, and the market trying to interpret the data and what that means for cuts for the November meeting. On the actual chart, still higher percentile of the Bollinger Band. You do see that 50-day moving average right here, the green line. So still very much above it. So especially based on the Elliott Wave technicals, there's a lot of room for it to essentially go down, continue to consolidate, where it still overall would be somewhat bullish. You do see, because of the consolidation over the last several trading days, stochastic has went from overbought to somewhat neutral, so it is at 58. You do see a bearish deviation at the same time, so red line above the white. A number of retail investors on Friday kind of maintained, but generally they have been kind of taking profits, and I think that could be said not necessarily just for Lucid, but a lot of growth stocks out there. So once again, to kind of summarize, a lot of bullish data points, somewhat optimistic. I think a lot of the negative ones are more so corresponding with the broader market and not Lucid specific. So that's just my own interpretation, of course. But like I mentioned, I want to give you the bull / bear case for this week. when it comes down to the bull case, let's say assuming the Feds don't really mess things up as far as one of their speeches, and then on the flip side, GDP and PCE come in better than anticipated, then you could see most likely a retest of roughly that $4 range. That's just my own opinion. I don't feel it's justified to hit that 440 at least for this week. I think what would be the driving factor would be their earnings to really push it and propel it to clearly the elite wave technicals projection around $5. I think that earnings has to be that deciding push, but I feel around $4 is realistic. Flip side, let's say data is negative, shorts start to really double down. I feel like it would be touching this S3. Anything below that S3 would be kind of too overdone, at least in the short term. So again, that's kind of, I know it's vague and both extremes, but Lucid has really shown time and time again that anything is possible. And based on my last video, like I kind of pointed, options activity did signal for it to actually push back to this 350 mark. And lo and behold, here we are. So this is why I like to analyze a lot of the data, give you a good representation of absolutely everything. On a side note, if you guys didn't listen to my video I put out on Saturday, I had a very nice chat with 𝗪𝗧. Very knowledgeable guy, and same with anyone else. If anyone ever wants to hop on and kind of just chat Lucid, film it, and then we can put it out. I always like to get different perspectives on that. And I really do value 𝗪𝗧's mentality. So yeah, it was kind of a nice chat. So if you guys haven't listened to it, I highly recommend you guys listening, because we kind of talk on Q2 expectations and just bigger picture for the rest of, for instance, 2024, 2025, things along those lines. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. And one final thing, take advantage of this promo. Simply sign up for a new account, throw $100 at it, and they give you 5 free stocks. Each stock is valued up to $2,000. Take advantage of this, link in the description below and also the comments. With all that said though, appreciate all of you watching.